You know, they say athletes say the darndest things, and so do managers, and we know sometimes people in the media. But of course, some of the things that they say can either make us cry, make us excited, make us wonder why did they say that at all. But they always make us remember that they said them. Here are the nominees for Quote of the Year. The nominees are Nolan Arenado, Jamal Murray, Brandon McManus, Karl Dorrell.
All right, the quote of the year, the best quote, the most quotable person saying the most quotable things. We have a couple good ones. I personally think there's one that is the absolute dominant, Michael Jordan in his prime quote, but we'll let the viewers decide here. I want to start, though, with Drew Creasman and the Colorado Rockies, because the quotes in this one run the gauntlet from funny to emotional to inspiring to maybe a little trip to Negative Town. And so I guess that's a good segue. Let's throw it to Drew for Negative Town.
And there's an extra layer of irony here because last year for the Goaties, Nolan Arenado got nominated for a quote for talking about how much he loved all those guys over there. That was his big quote. And just 1 year later, we have, I really don't care what's being said. I just know that I feel disrespected over there. He told both the Denver Post and Thomas Harding of MLB.com, not happy with the Rockies front office. Obviously, you know, this wouldn't win for best quote of the year or feel good quote of the year, but it certainly is a quote that is, everyone remembers it. It's quotable. They remember that he said it, and it went national, man. I was like on some random video game podcast a couple of weeks ago talking to people. When they told them what I do, their first thoughts were, man, Nolan's not happy with that team out there.
You know, well, that's what I wanted to make sure. Over there references the Colorado Rockies organization.
Yeah, I mean, particularly, I think the GM, and that sort of came out in the following days. There was also, there's so much around the quote of like, there had been these rumors all off season that he was maybe going to get traded. That morning, the GM came out and said, we're not trading him. He's going to be on the team day one. So people finally exhaled for about 3 or 4 hours. And then Nolan came out and said he felt disrespected by the whole thing. And then just 24 hours later was all the Walker Hall of Fame stuff. So it was just a whirlwind ride for Rockies fans. But it has defined every conversation about the Colorado Rockies since he said it. Every potential trade, every potential free agent, everything about how good they could be next year or this last year, all of it has to do with whether or not Nolan's going to be a part of their future. And the most recent public statements that we have about that still really are this. Like I said, you talk to your grandma and you mention the Colorado Rockies. She might be like, oh, yeah, I don't know anything about, but isn't Nolan Arenado mad at the GM? Like, everybody knows this. So, like,
Andre, in your opinion, is this the defining trait of the Rockies? For the 2020 Rockies, disgruntled, discontent?
Might encompass the vibe of the entire year. Rockies are not, just in general. But yeah, I mean, that inner conflict between front office and superstar definitely kind of defined the offseason and expectations once we got into the season. The Rockies had a almost 2-week stretch where they overcame that. It was like an in your face to all that and looked really good. And then that kind of fell apart. But yeah, I mean, I see Drew's argument. Yeah, it's definitely, we went a little nihilistic with this one, but I think I've sold at this point.
What's funny is I don't think of Arenado as the most like quotable athlete, but here we are 2 years in a row with him being nominated on the Rockies beat. Let's go from the depressing to maybe a little bit more lighthearted and over to Broncos. RK, what got the nom for the Broncos?
Yeah, this one was tough because the Broncos were kind of depressing this year, and it kind of fits with the vibe, just sort of the way the Rockies quote fits with the vibe. But it was Brandon McManus after the game saying, quote, Brandon McManus sucked today.
Yes.
And it, actually during the best social media segment, we talked about how being self-deprecating can be a really good quality in these sort of things and in quotes or whatever. And Brandon McManus kind of encapsulated it here by dunking on himself before anyone else could.
Yeah. Is he like always talking in the third person, or is this a unique form of tweet from him?
This was a one-off, I think.
My read on Brandon McManus is like he knows who he is. He's like super comfortable in his skin. He's a kicker. He knows he's like the lowest guy in the totem pole, and he just lives that up to like the fullest extent possible. And he just totally embraces that.
Right. He also has it going for him that he's like cool. Like people on the team like him, so he can lean into being a kicker and like not take himself too seriously because he's liked.
Do you prefer the kicker that way, or do you prefer the who are the two brother kickers that were like, who's the guy that pulled his hamstring? This was like 15 years ago. Grammatica, yeah. Like, do you prefer that style of like fiery and intense? It's like, yo, you're the kicker. Let's No,
I want my kickers knowing that they're kickers. And Brandon McManus honestly crosses the line sometimes. Like last year when he threw his helmet because he didn't get an opportunity to kick the longest field goal. Like, I
love that. Are you kidding? I'm for this. I'm very pro.
I was like, dude, you're the kicker. You don't ever get to throw your helmet.
It is funny though. If you're a kicker, what are you looking forward to? You're looking forward to an opportunity to do something cool. You don't need little chip-ins, little 15-yarders, point afters. Like, no, you don't want that. You want the 67-yard field goal opportunity.
He got that this year, and it didn't go very well.
Well, there you go. Brandon McManus sucked that day. All right, let's go over to the CU beat here, Hank. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so for everybody who didn't follow along with the Buffs football team this season, they were not supposed to be good. They were supposed to be the worst team in the Pac-12. They were supposed to just like not compete. New coach, no practices, all that kind of stuff. But they wound up with a star, one of the best running backs in all of college football, the National Comeback Player of the Year, Jarek Broussard, who just went off. I think he had like 400-yard games to start his career. That had only happened like 4 times ever. And the only person with more in a row was Adrian Peterson. It was just like this historic start as the Buffs are winning every game that they're playing, going undefeated through their first 4 games. And in that 4th game, that was the real breakout. That was the day that Jarek Broussard just burst onto the scene. He ran for over 300 yards, set a whole bunch of records in the process. And I think it was on Monday. It was the Monday after the game. The Buffs are 4-0 when somebody says, so Karl, Jarek is still wearing that knee brace. He's still out there. Like, is that hindering him? Is that something that's holding him back? And what Karl said was, yeah, he's probably 90-95%. And for Buffs fans to hear that he's 90-95% after that incredible start to the season, like it's just a pretty cool moment. And that's why it's the quote of the year from the Buffs.
There's no irony in this. There's no sarcasm. He's being serious. He's just saying, yeah, because Karl Dorrell doesn't cross me as a guy that has like a sense of humor. He doesn't seem like a funny.
It comes out in weird times. Like occasionally it'll be like a little joke, but it is kind of like subdued, and he's very like focused and looking straight ahead. That day he was laughing quite a bit. I think at one point he even said like, he could wear 2 knee braces for all I care if he's going to keep running like this.
Yeah, and I think I think there was like a little bit of sarcasm on it, just because he knew like this dude just ran for 300 yards in a game. So like, oh, is he back? Well, he's 90-95%. Like, leave a little bit to the imagination.
Well, I like it. I guess the last one we can move on to here on the Denver Nuggets beat, Harrison, an emotional one. We've had some funny, we've had some dark. Take us to the Nuggets.
Yeah, so it's important for this Jamal Murray quote to kind of set the stage, I think. I mean, this was after Game 6, Nuggets, Jazz, Denver, is in the process of coming back from a 3-1 deficit. Jamal Murray has another 50-point game. This is a couple days after the NBA season was put on hold after the Jacob Blake shooting. So many just raw emotions running through every one of the players as they're stuck inside this bubble. And Jamal Murray just has this banger of a performance, another banger from him. And then his emotions just kind of take over post game. And it was the quote of the year, I thought, and maybe the quote of the year in like sports in general.
And in life, you find things that hold value and things to fight for. We found something worth fighting for as an NBA, as a collective unit. And I usually choose as a symbol to me to keep fighting all around the world. So like I said, they give me a lot of power to keep fighting, and we want to win. I show my emotion, it comes out. So
yeah.
And this is a guy right here, Jamal Murray, in that quote. That's somebody who in that moment is so physically spent, physically and emotionally. Yeah. He gave everything in that game, in that playoff series, in that run from a mental and physical standpoint that he had to give. And it all just came out in that quote, and that's why it was so special.
It was the best game of his career. And I think there's not a close second. I know he had another 50-point game earlier. It came in a loss. He had a couple of those points. He had the three-pointer to get it to 50 at the end where it was kind of pointless. But this was a game where coming into it, everybody kept asking. There was that emotional break. These teams have been in the bubble for a couple months at this point, or at least a month and a half, maybe 2 months at this point. Everybody kept saying, I don't know how these players can play, the emotional weight of everything. I don't know how they can do it. And so for him to come out and not just play well, but to have the best game of his career with the back against the wall, and then to see, you saw him and he's screaming, he's pumping his fist, he's doing all this thing, and then you think the adrenaline's flowing. So as you go to cut to the interview, you're thinking like, oh, Jamal Murray feeling himself. And immediately it changes to this like emotional, it was just the ultimate like, you felt every single emotion watching that game and then going to that post game, and it encapsulated not just the sports experience, but also the experience of what it was like to exist at that moment, this moment in time, and what was going on, both with the pandemic, but also with the social justice movement. So to me, I can't imagine a better moment and a better quote. Not to lead the audience here, but
and one other thing that I think makes this different and special is that if we would have voted on this before, after last year's Goaties and put odds on who would have the best quote of the year, Jamal Murray would have been like 100 to 1 to have the quote of the year. No, he's just not that type of guy. For him to just open up and let his emotions out and just be so real and raw in that moment was really, really extra special.
And I think it's noteworthy that, if you watch it, when you're watching it live, you could tell he was almost embarrassed by his emotion. And that's why he says, like, I show my emotion sometimes. Like, you could tell he was trying to, like, not be, there was nothing inauthentic about this moment. It was just such an overwhelming display of emotion. And to me personally, Jamal Murray, an up and down player, even to this date, an up and down player. But to me, it wasn't just the 50-point performance. The interview from that point on, it's like, how could you not be a ride or die fan of Jamal Murray? Like it's very rare in sports. I feel like you see the athlete, unfiltered and everything. And that was a rare, unfiltered moment with Jamal Murray. And I think that's part of what makes it so special. Andre, Drew, any thoughts on it?
No, I agree. I think that for all the reasons you said, that's probably why it's quote of the year. Certainly, I wouldn't even vote for the Rockies one.
I think it's like the quote of the year in like all of sports.
Could be
the defining NBA moments probably of the last several years. Just with the pandemic and the social justice movement and how front and center the NBA has been with that. It's an all-timer.
Yeah, an all-timer. Yeah. Well, an all-timer. Go ahead. Do you have something there?
Yeah, I mean, it really does just like sum everything up. Like, I don't know what more you could ask for of a quote. Like maybe for that to have come after a finals game, but that's really splitting hairs if you're asking for something like that. Like for this year, it really does just hit everything that you would want it to hit.
Yeah, it's an incredible quote. A lot of incredible quotes here that were fun. So that's what makes it fun. The Goatie quote of the year. It could be anything. Funny, emotional, sad, dark. If it's the Rockies, it could be anything. Let's find out who won.
And the winner is Jamal Murray.